This tutorial will discuss how work order types are used in Guardian. Work order types are useful for dividing your group of work orders into smaller subgroups for reporting, costing, and just management purposes. To set up a work order type, we would go to the Setup menu, down to Work Orders, and to Work Order Types. I have 4 work order types set up in this database. PM work orders for my preventive maintenance jobs that are triggered. General work orders for jobs that don't have a specific categorization. Breakdown work orders for my breakdown incidents that I want to record. And capital work orders for my capital projects. You can have as many work order types as you need, but I would encourage you not to add too many at the beginning. Just put the ones in that you know you're going to use, and you can add new ones as you go. Now, the information that you need to put a work order type in the system is a description, in this case PM work orders, a prefix, and the prefix will be displayed before the actual number of the work order. So whenever I create a PM work order, it's going to start with PM, and then it's going to have the next number in the series, in this case 10,000. So the work order number would be PM 10,000. And once I use that number, the next number field is automatically incremented, so it would then read 10,001, and that would be the next PM work order that I would get. The department is always set to universal unless you're using departmental security. So just set it to universal, and that'll be the last time you have to touch that. The next number field is, as I discussed earlier, the starting number used for that series. I like to use 10,000 because that gives me 90,000 work orders within each series before it adds an additional digit to the number. The type field is used to simply categorize your work order types. So in this case, I have scheduled maintenance set up for my PM work orders. My breakdown work orders, I might select emergency repair. For my capital projects, I would simply select other. But just select the one that most closely matches the types of jobs that you're doing in that work order series. This is used very rarely, is typically only used in some reports. So it's not a terribly important setting, but choose the best match for the work order type you have. If you want a job factor set to anything other than 1, you can enter that. The enabled checkbox will be on by default. And as you add a new work order type, just hit the Enter key, and it will then be added into the system. Now, to activate the work order type, there's an additional step that's required, and that involves using the Guardian Security Administrator. And that is typically found in your Start menu, in the Program Groups, Guardian CMMS, and Security Administrator. And you need to be enabled to access this. Only administrative users will be able to get into this screen. So when you log in, you will get the user screen tab. Now, we're not going to talk about the user screen tab this time, but I will briefly talk about the groups. I like to set up 3 groups to do with work orders in all the systems that I configure. Work order inquiry, work order management, work order update. Work order inquiry will allow any users that are a member of this group to only look at work orders. They can't make any changes or any updates. Work order management will allow the members of that group to virtually do anything they need to with regards to work orders. That would include all the setup parameters, open and closed work orders, changing history. So it's only a very select few users that will be a member of the work order management group. And work order update. This is the day-to-day users of work orders. These would be people who would be creating new jobs, who would be adding time card entries or editing work orders, and be looking at work order history. So once we set up those groups, and setting up a group is very simple, just click the Add button and give it a group description, and that's all you need to do. Once we have those groups set up, we'll go to the Rights screen, and this is where we define what each group can do. So if I'm looking at my work order update group, I'm going to go down to the category of work orders. Now, I encourage you to set this screen up so it looks like I have it set up here. Drag the category field up into this top section if it isn't already there. and then click once on the description column, and that will sort by that column. That way we'll be looking at the same thing. So in my work order group of settings for work order update, you can see all the different parameters that I can select. Now it's basically true or false on virtually all these settings. False being you do not have access to that, true being you do. So as we read down the list, you can see the top few are all kind of management functions. Can I add work order types? Can I add work order statuses, work order priorities? Can I add cause and repair codes? These are adding those values to system tables. So normally the average user wouldn't have access to any of that. Then we get into functions that are specific to each work order type. So you can see that they're in groups. You can see our 4 work order types that we've defined and whether the users that are a member of this group can do a particular function against each of those work orders. In this case, the first one is, can I change the equipment number on a work order after costs are actually posted to that work order? And normally that wouldn't be a function that the average user would be allowed to do, and because I'm in work order update, which is just the typical day-to-day work order user, I'm going to leave all those as false. As I scroll down the list, I'll get to create work orders of each of the work order types, and in that case for the average user I do want to turn those on. Now there could be the exception where you don't want certain users to be able to create capital work orders, so you might make that one false and have another group just for capital work order users. And as I scroll down this list, do I want to be able to edit work orders of each of these types? Yes, I do. That's something my average daily work order user would do. And the rest of them are going to be false, managing notification information, until we get down to our update SCA or symptom cause action information on closed jobs. Sometimes a user will remember something they did on a job, but the job's been closed. If we allow them to go back and just update the SCA information, then they can go in and add that little bit of extra information without having to reopen the work order. So I'm going to set those to true. Do we want the user to be able to access the short work order form? Yes, we do. We want to set that to true so they can enter breakdown work orders. Do we want to allow them to post non-purchase order costs? So these are costs that might go against a work order that didn't come through the purchase order system. Maybe they went out and had to buy something on a credit card to get a job done, a last minute thing. So we can record those costs. So I've set that to true. Can they reopen work orders to make additional changes to it? Well, normally I would set that to false and leave that to an administrative type of user. And can they view work orders? Yes, I'm going to allow them to view any work order because they can create and edit them. We need to allow them to also look at them. So you would go through and update the settings for each of those work order groups. So work order inquiry, they would only have the view work order settings set to true. That's all they would have. Work order management would have virtually everything in here set to true. Once you set those groups up, the work order type that you created will then be active in Guardian. You will need to log out of Guardian and back in again in order for those new security settings to take place. Now, the last thing you would do once you set these rights is assign a user to those groups. So for my work order inquiries, you can see I've only got one user in my system, but you would see the list of all your users in the left column here. I would click on the user I want to be a part of the work order inquiry group and just click add, and that will then add them to that group and give them the capability of viewing work orders. If I want them in the management group, I would do the same thing there. They typically will only be a member of one group. If you're a member of the management group, you can do everything work order update or work order inquiry can do. If you're a member of the work order update group, you can also do what the work order inquiry group does. So you would select the highest capability group for each user that they need. And once you've done that, that's all you need to do in the security side. Those work order types will be active and you'll see them the next time you log into Guardian.